Imagine standing on the edge of a desert, looking up at a mountain that crackles with thunder though the skies are clear. Beneath its peak, one man stands alone, his face glowing with firelight, not of this world. That man is Moses. But who was Moses, really? For generations, he's been hailed as the greatest prophet, the lawgiver, the redeemer. Yet deep in the pages of the Talmud and Midrash, the portrait is far more complex and far more human. You might think the Talmud would only praise him, but the sages didn't just place Moses on a pedestal. They questioned him, challenged him, even showed us his doubts, his fears, his mistakes. What they left us is a legacy not of perfection, but of profound humanity. Let's begin where Moses almost didn't. When God first appeared to Moses at the burning bush, commanding him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses didn't leap at the opportunity. He resisted. He pleaded, "Please, send someone else." Why? The Midrash tells us Moses argued with God for 7 days, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't think he was worthy. He claimed he had uncircumcised lips, a metaphor for a speech impediment, perhaps a stutter. But deeper still was Moses' fear of failure. Here the Talmud invites us into a moment not of divine glory, but of human vulnerability. Imagine that. Moses, the man who would split the sea, was once too afraid to speak. And then there's the question of leadership. Was Moses born to lead, or was he molded into one? One story from the Midrash tells of Moses as a young shepherd tending Jethro's flock. A lamb strayed far from the rest. Moses chased after it, only to find the lamb at a stream, drinking. Moses didn't beat the lamb or drag it back. Instead, he cradled it in his arms and said, "If I had known you were thirsty, I would have carried you myself." When God saw this, the Midrash says, he declared, "This is the kind of leader my people need." It's a beautiful story, but it's also a challenge. The sages suggest that true leadership isn't about power, it's about compassion. Moses didn't just herd his people, he cared for them, deeply, painfully. Yet this compassion was tested over and over. After the sin of the golden calf, God's wrath burned hot. The people had barely received the commandments and were already worshiping an idol. And what does Moses do? He breaks the tablets, the very ones written by God's own hand. This act might seem like rage or despair, but the rabbis see something else. A bold, desperate move to protect the people. Moses knew that if he handed them those tablets, they'd be bound to a covenant they had just shattered. By breaking them, he buys time. By breaking them, he shows his willingness to stand between his people and divine judgment. And then Moses says something shocking. He turns to God and declares, "If you will not forgive them, erase me from your book." This isn't poetry. It's a direct challenge. Moses is risking everything, not just his life, but his legacy, for a people who betrayed him. In that moment, the rabbis teach, Moses becomes not just a prophet, but a defender, a man who speaks truth to power, even to God. But Moses' struggles don't end there. There's the incident at the waters of Meribah. The people cry out for water. God instructs Moses to speak to the rock. Instead, Moses strikes it. Water flows, but there are consequences. God tells Moses he will not enter the promised land. Why such a harsh punishment? The Talmud debates this intensely. Was it disobedience, a failure of faith, or was God simply holding Moses to a higher standard? One interpretation suggests that Moses' act revealed an old habit, reverting to force when he should have led with faith. Another view is even more sobering. The people needed a new kind of leader to enter the land, and Moses, as great as he was, belonged to the generation of the desert. Imagine the heartbreak. After leading the people for 40 years, Moses stands at the edge, sees the land, and is denied. Not for murder, not for betrayal, but for a moment's misstep. a missed opportunity. And yet the Talmud doesn't let us dwell in tragedy. One of the most mysterious and moving passages is found in Tractate Sota. The rabbis ask, "Who buried Moses?" The answer, God himself. No human being knows where Moses is buried. His grave remains hidden. The man who argued with God, pleaded with God, defied God, is laid to rest by God. And perhaps no story captures the tension between Moses' greatness and his humanity better than the one in Menachot 29b. There, Moses ascends to heaven and finds God attaching little crowns to the letters of the Torah. He asks why. God tells him, "In many generations there will arise a man, Akiva ben Yosef, who will derive mountains of laws from each of these crowns." Moses asks to see this Akiva. He is transported to Akiva's classroom. He sits at the back, bewildered. He doesn't understand a word. Imagine, the giver of the Torah is confused by its future interpretations. Moses begins to despair. But then, a student asks Akiva, "How do you know this law?" Akiva replies, "It is a law given to Moses at Sinai." Moses is comforted. And then he sees Akiva's fate, tortured, martyred by the Romans. He asks God, "Is this the reward for Torah?" And God replies, "Be silent, this is my decree." What do we take from this? That even Moses didn't understand everything. That even the greatest prophet had moments of doubt, of despair. That even he needed reassurance. And that sometimes divine justice is hidden, even from those closest to God. In all these stories, the Talmud invites us to look beyond the myth and see the man. A man who loved deeply, who feared often, who argued passionately. A man who climbed mountains and still couldn't reach the one thing he desired most. But perhaps his greatness lies in that very struggle. Moses wasn't perfect. He didn't need to be. His flaws are what make him real. His failures are what make his triumphs meaningful. And his story, told and retold across centuries, is a mirror held up to every generation, asking us, what does it mean to lead, to serve, to believe? The Talmud doesn't give us a single answer. It gives us 1,000 arguments. But in the echoes of those debates, one truth resounds. Moses wasn't the hero because he was flawless. He was the hero because he never stopped striving, not for himself, but for his people, for justice, and for a God who he sometimes questioned and yet always followed. So what did the Talmud really say about Moses? Everything. And it's not what you think. If you found this journey into the Talmud as fascinating as we did, if it challenged what you thought you knew, or opened your eyes to a deeper layer of ancient wisdom, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more thought-provoking documentaries. We're just getting started exploring the mysteries, debates, and timeless truths hidden in the Hebrew Talmud. So hit the bell to stay updated and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what resonated with you. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the oldest texts still ask the newest questions.